Week 3 of the Smogon Champions League has concluded. Of course, I gotta cover these NU games. And we had some true bangers this week. Gonna start off with probably the most banging match of them all. And conclude with another one, a masterclass from GXC on how you've got to try and navigate some of these very, very tough matchups. Yes, sometimes your opponent has to misplay a bit into them, but hey, that's fine. That is fine. If you've been enjoying the content as of late, make sure you do subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Leave a like too. We're so close to getting 5k subscribers. I think we just hit 4.3k. So everyone watching, go subscribe right now. We hit our goal tonight. I think that's a pretty good deal. You know, help me out. Anyhow, we're going to start with this Freezai TNunes game. And if you are a Freezai viewer, you have already seen this game. This is going to be pretty quick. Let's give a little team preview analysis, though. This Fara Giraffe, depending on Terra type, could either be incredible or worthless this game. Because we've seen in the previous metas a lot of Terra Fairy, Terra Fire popping up every now and then too. And there's a kind of matchup where you see if it's Terra Fire, it's quite strong. Because assuming Levitate Bronzong, then you just smack it. You're one-shotting everything when you get some boost going. So that's really good. And then even really Salazzle is kind of difficult to take on too. Like, fire types in general run through its team, at least especially offensive ones. Because Salazzle's going to be able to pop Altaria if it's like Nasty Plot Sludge Bomb. We already mentioned if that was like Terra Blast Fire, would easily beat Altaria down too. So I think Freezai's got a very, very favorable matchup. Really the only thing that's kind of scary on this team is like, we do see that Shaman Jolteon core again. So if the battle takes too many turns, you do have to worry about Jolteon just trading HP randomly versus some threat earlier. You know, maybe burns its Terra Fairy just to get Chip on Gligar, and then coming back later on, perhaps after Sneasel, and just hazards damage of Chip down his team. And you gotta try and beat Jolteon again. So that's really the only threat that I see on TNunes' side. Otherwise, I really like the angle for Freezai. And we get into this game, Tatsugiri lead versus the Quill. He immediately doubles, thinking that something like Bronzong could come out here, because that's really the only check. And I'm here to tell you right now, this game is already over. We see TNunes switch, only because you don't know if it's Sapsiper. So you go to the, Steel type to check the Psychic. And unfortunately, Fara Giraffe has decided he wants to be a Fire type. Now here, TNunes goes Altaria, kind of trying to, feign the whole, oh, what if I'm Perish song? The problem with this play is, of course, it doesn't matter if you are, because why would I switch? I want to find out if you're Perish song first, so let me attack you, get some chip. And it's, yeah, nastier and Fara Giraffe, and there is nothing TNunes can do. This game is over. We do see him go for Terra Steel here, trying to live a hit. The problem is, you don't ever not go for Terra Blast there, because, okay, well, obviously he's trying to bait you to Psychic, whether it's a double to Sneasel or a Terra something with the Quill. So Fara Giraffe just spams out Terra Blast for the rest of the game. And within 10 turns, Freezai has absolutely smashed TNunes. Subscribe. Very beautiful first game. I thought the team choice from Freezai's side was very, very cool. Hey, shout out to Pokeslice and everyone else helping over there. They are putting together some absolute bangers of teams. Giving us some great content to look at. You love to see it. And now, we get to see the team a second time. Apparently, Maru built, like, a lot of teams this week, and he didn't end up liking any of the ones that he had, so he just said, screw it. I'll go steal Freezai's team. The problem is, Elias Sai is a devout supporter of Freezai. And you should be too. Go subscribe to Freezai if you're not already. Puts out some very fun content. And I think Elias probably knew the team a bit better than Maru would have hoped for. Which isn't, like... I'm of the opinion that you probably should not recycle known teams. At least known when there's available pastes. Now, I wasn't aware whether or not there was the paste linked. Apparently, the paste of this team is already known. If you have seen the Freezai video, it's in the description. So, I don't love doing that myself, because I think if your opponent just knows everything about your team, it's kind of bad. Because then they know, like, on a mon like Fara Giraffe, for example, is it Sapsiper or is it Armor Tail? Well, Elias knows immediately, if he's seen the pace, that this is Armor Tail, so that Rotom Mow, it can Leaf Storm the Fara Giraffe, and that does actually end up relevant later on in this battle. So that's an example of where I wouldn't love it so much, but end of the day, it's a good team in Meru's mind, so he wanted to use it, and he didn't like what he had, so I don't think there's really any fault there for it. You just gotta, play a game knowing your opponent might know your set. Also, shoutouts to TNunes, I believe, who brought Mabosif last week. Elias has brought it this week, and it actually is a really good matchup from preview. Pretty good at forcing out Pokemon. It partly contingent on Scarf versus Band, and I would say on this team, I mean, it could easily be either. You don't know if the Rotom Mow is Scarf or not from preview. My guess is always going to be that the Rotom Mow is Scarf, because Scarf Rotom Mow is just, really good set. Scarf Mabostiff is also kind of weak, especially as the tier has gotten stronger. It's harder to get those one-shots or those two-shots, even with Stakeout with Mabostiff, so you kind of end up wanting the extra oomph. But regardless, it's still faster than something like Tatsugiri, for example. It's still able to, face off against Gligar, especially if your own Gligar has knockoff, and you're able to get one on the Gligar of Meru's. Maybe even the Salazzle's got knockoff. So there's definitely ways to open up the game from Mabostiff. And, otherwise I'm thinking Salazzle's probably the threat late game, because you just look at Meru's team, it's pretty slow. Lazzle outspeeds literally the entire team, outside of the Salazzle on Meru's end. So that's what I'm looking for to win this game. And here we see an Avalugg lead, and we of course see Meru even copying what Freezai did, leading off with Tatsugiri as well. This time though, double switching to Kaparaja. As he gets a Rocks up early. This is of course great. Getting chip damage constantly is always nice. And we also see the knock on the Gligar pretty early too, which opens things up a bit more for Scyther potentially. Gligar, not like some incredible wall versus Scyther or anything, but at the very least, if it's like acrobatics, you got a move that's doing a little bit more chip. Now it does even more chip now, but hey, SD and then like Terra Flying, you probably would have obliterated that. Can't Terra Flying, of course, because you just terrored with Gligar to spin block and Avalugg. But hey, I mean, dual Wing Beat versus that at +2, it's gonna be at 80%, and then maybe you just U-turn once, and then you're forced to come in again later. It could be even lower. All that to say, the Salazzle's in a really strong spot right now. Tatsugiri is not really looking like it's going to do a whole lot of anything, as it fires off a Jericho Meteor versus his Chansey. Doesn't really end up doing too much, of course, because it is Chansey. Also, I just want to point this out. Tatsugiri did take Stealth Rock up here, so odds are it's actually like Scarf Tatsu, because otherwise, again, we just talked about it seems very, very slow. And 21% chance, that doesn't seem like specs to me. Maybe it is. I don't know the, Tatsu versus Chansey calcs very well. As Mabostiff finally getting in, we're going to see a very powerful Unch come on out from it as Tatsugiri comes out. Sadly, you did not need Stakeout to KO a 4% health Tatsugiri. And now Elias chooses to sack Mabostiff because Scyther is too threatening. If its Sword Stance is up, it's looking kind of problematic. Avalugg lost its boots. Gligar lost its Violet. You do not want that mon starting to get fire off boosted hits. And of course, you don't want to risk Salazzle. That's just a bit difficult to justify. And yeah, we get Avalugg back out versus the Raja. Meru always has this Gligar to go into. He also has the Salazzle that can pivot in on a recover. And it's a pretty good spot for it to be in. Chansey comes out. Fire Blast is always safe to go for once. And we are going to see Meru look to try and set up the game for one of his setup sweepers here, as he goes for a Sludge Bomb versus Chansey, with the sole intent of trying to get the Encore lock on it for later. Because now it's locked into Seismic Toss, he cannot go for a Soft Boiled. This Chansey is now going to be pretty weak, as this allows Scyther for re-entry here. If you want to, you can Sword Stance up here. Meru opts for a Trailblaze instead, going for game here, very, very clearly. And in dual Wing beating the Salazzle, getting rid of that mon's quite good, especially as you see how scary it could have been at this point with nothing to outrun it. And then Meru makes a bit of a curious play for me because he Sword Stances and dies to Icicle Crash. And I think what he was just kind of acknowledging is don't really have too many other turns you're going to get at this point to set up with the Scyther. Like, this is probably your best shot at winning it or Farigiraf. So I'm guessing the thought process was I could probably go for game here. If I get a dodge, I should just always win. And you also don't want, you know, Avalugg is going to otherwise recover back up afterwards. You know, say you U-turn into Gligar or something, Lug will recover. It's just, it could be kind of dire. Maybe I'm wrong. There might have been a different thought process, but goes for a miss, does not get it. Giraffe now comes out, easily revenge kills Lug with a Psychic. As Chansey always has to be the response from Elias. If I'm remembering a calc that was posted correctly, by the way, there is actually already a damage roll for Leaf Storm from Rotom-o to KO. It was like 55 to 64-ish, so keep that in mind. Yeah, Fire Giraffe will start boosting versus this Chansey. Elias will have the counter boost with Calm Mind. Of course, this is just to offset Fire Giraffe's boosts. Chansey is not looking to actually sweep or anything. And Elias starts getting a little bit of chip. Unfortunately, because the Fire Giraffe was out of range pretty quickly from Rotom-o's Leaf Storm, you're not really getting a turn to where you could aggressively switch out of Chansey into the Rotom-o to just Leaf Storm it. So, Mary's able to just start spamming off Psychics and seeing, okay, can I get a critical hit? Because, of course, if Mary crit through the Chansey at any point, well, yeah, there's then no reason to set up a Chansey all that time. And that's why you see it, not on this turn here, you're going to see Elias go for one more Calm Mind. Yeah, here we see one more Calm Mind. And after the drop, he kind of just recognizes, look, Hacks is a real thing that could happen. I need to just get this last Seismic or two off to make sure I can actually revenge kill this Fire Giraffe with my Rotom-o. So he chooses to sack the Chansey there, get in Rotom, easily Leaf Storm it, as that will allow Copper-Raja to come in the following turn. Maybe it would have been better if Mary went his own Raja there. I think that was a bit easier of a play to do. Because even if Gligar comes out, then you could always protect. And then, like, maybe sack Fire Giraffe? Maybe that would have been fine. Anyhow, we see Raja in now. Heavy slams the Gligar, does a lot. And you're going to see the whole battle kind of change complexions here, too. Because Mario, in theory, has got a pretty strong winning position, and he gets crit. Otherwise, that EQ does, like, around 60-ish at maximum. And that whole crit there just means the Rotom-o has a far more likely chance of winning now. As it is a pretty bulky one from what we end up seeing. Or this Raja is, like, negative attack investment, one of the two. Is he going to be spamming out his Volt Switches? Terra Steals, I guess, just to show that he has Terra Steel. Because the Heavy Slam from Copper-Raja does not do anywhere near enough damage. Maru would need to get another double Protect here. And unfortunately, that is just simply not in the cards. As it fails there, Gligar will come out now. But since it Terastallized early, the Volt Switch is going to actually do damage. And we see that it's enough to two shots, so Maru forfeits, because, yeah, there's no winning at that point. Like I said, I think the crit sucked, but maybe you needed to preserve Fire Giraffe on this turn here. Also, sorry if y'all hear the loud vehicles moving outside. I don't know if that's a school bus or if that's a garbage collecting truck. Anyhow, I think maybe here you preserve this just so it's a sack. I don't know if you tank Gligar EQ. I guess a lot of it depends on if you tank Gligar EQ. Alright, yeah, I did a quick calc, paused the video for that, and you did not tank Gligar EQ, so I don't think it mattered. It would have just been like, you pivot in Raja on the Rotom-o, you get off a Heavy Slam a little earlier now, and then you're able, again, you could take the same sequence, you could sack your, Fire Giraffe maybe to the Gligar EQ after a Protect, and then go your own Gligar versus his Gligar, and to just look for a bit of trading. I think that probably would have been the play. And if Rotom-o comes out, of course, you could always knock it, get rid of the Scarf earlier. I don't know if that would have caused the game to be for sure over, because maybe the Rotom-o has, like, maybe just T-bolts you down at that point. But I think that was at least another route. It might have not been a guaranteed win, though, either way. I think at the end of the day, the crits would really seal the game. Now, we got a wonderful matchup between two good friends, Eternally and Danny. Now, what's really funny is I had actually done a couple test battles versus Danny this week, and I'd also seen Eternaly's team at some point, or a team he was planning to use. So I was doing this whole counteracting in my mind of like, I literally cannot tell them anything that's particularly useful information, because I do not want to leak anything to the other person. What I will say, one thing I mentioned, I think, because I do think Danny showed me this team. Because Eternally, okay, now I remember. Eternally didn't show me this team as a whole. I'm bringing this. It was a different team he had shown me, so I think he decided against it and brought this one instead. He did use this against me in a fun game, but it was not known that this was what he was bringing. But anyway, I remember it's just kind of funny seeing that Eternally pivoted to this build, because I remember Danny showed me this one, and I'm like, hey, this looks a little weak to Scarf Bruxish. How the hell do you beat this mon ever? And there's the Scarf Bruxish, and guess what? It ends up really good this game. Because I did some calcs real quick. Terra Psychic Fangs from Scarf Bruxish. A lot of the mons in this team are getting 2-shot without too much chip needed. Even Copper Raja, it takes like something like around 47% or so. Like, I think it was like 40 to 47 was the calc. So you don't need a lot of damage on that mon. Palisand as well. I think with like Stealth Rock or a Spike, it's 2-shot to Dunspar's same fate. And this is Coil, so it doesn't even have the physical bulk investment normally. H-Trode from Wave Crash takes like 47% or something. It's a tough mon to play against, and I don't believe that Danny had, at least at the time, maybe he changed it. But at the time, Danny didn't even have a Terra type on his team that he could use to help versus Psychic Fangs, so... yeah, Bruxidemon I'm looking at. If I'm looking at a potential way for Danny to win, it's kind of just hope Scyther can do enough. I mean, Scyther could potentially get by the Gligar or the Bronzong, maybe. But, I don't know. I don't love the matchup from Preview. I really don't like any of these win cons. And some of that's because of other things I know about Eternaly's team. Anyhow, we see EQ turn 1, because don't let the Salazzle get greedy and do anything. Danny's a very aggressive player, so he's 100% the kind of guy who would have stayed in with Salazzle turn 1 to knock, as the Gligar hazarded. So, Eternally smart, the EQ, and then gets up a free Spike. This brings out this Rotom. And the nice thing for Eternally this game, as we see Danny get that 50-50 right, Eternally has a leftovers Rotom-Mo, so he doesn't actually care about getting them wrong, because he can always leave the next turn if he wants. So it's not a big deal. As we see him now just Volt Switch out, the H-Trode T-Bolt doing negligible damage, as I am brought out. Wow, incredible. And this is just a very, very free attack if you want. You can throw up your Stealth Rock. You got a couple options. As Eternally Psychics, trying to make sure that Salazzle ain't getting too aggressive or anything. And this turn he makes a nice little aggro play for his own end of it, getting his Stealth Rock up. It'll be very good to help limit Palisand, Copper Raja, especially as we mentioned earlier. Psychic Fangs is scary late game. So, again, gets goobed, the Palisand stays in. Thankfully for Eternally this turn, though, he does Leaf Storm the Palisand. Danny's greed coming back to haunt him as he loses out on his Palisand. And that's kind of bad as well for the Bruxish matchup, because, well, Palisand's bulky enough to take some hits. At least from full. So, losing one of your potential mons, even though you'd have to Terrastalize, it still was a potential check. Kind of sucks. And we see Eternally just trade off his Lazzle for a little bit of progress versus the opposing Lazzle, particularly given he just doesn't have a real switch in anyway, so getting a knock is nice enough. And here we see Bruxish come out and exert its dominance, two-shotting the H-Trode with the Wave Crash. Very, very nicely done, as now the Copper Raja will come out. You can't one-shot it, so Eternally will switch out into his Rotom-Mo, which has done more than enough this battle. He doesn't really need it anymore, so he throws off a Will-O-Wisp. Unfortunately, misses Salazzle. Of course, that was totally very impactful. Yep. Yeah, he sacks the Rotom-Mo just to the Salazzle Sludge Bomb. Bruxish still gets to come right back out. And he Wave Crashes, because there's no Water Resist. Also, you don't want to risk this mon being like Terra, I don't know, Terra Dark or something as you Psyfangs anyway. But also there's a Copper, so why would you Psyfangs? You know? So, easy Wave Crash. Brux still around to do a little bit more of that later on. Eternally able to get rid of this Copper Raja now with his Gligar. Acroing just in case that Scyther pivoted in. You don't want to give Danny any extra room. And because this is Acro Gligar too, Danny can't even really try to look for a setup with Scyther, which is pretty helpful. So, the Scyther comes back. Not Scyther. Brux come back out. Wave crashes Scyther. And here, you're just going to see a self-KO because Eternally knows he can win this game at this point. Also, why would you switch out? Because you're just going to die to rocks. Danny always roost, and here we see the set that gooped me in testing. Terra Ghost, sub-bulk up Grim. Completely walling this to Dunsparce, and I'm here to tell you, there's nothing to take from the rest of this game. They both boost all the way up to +6, and Eternally set just literally always stalls out. All this has is Dragon Tail. You can't make enough progress. It is Jovel. Game 4. We got Watashi versus Calos, and when I saw the Scun tank in this game, I immediately knew ZS had his hands all over this build. Or at least somewhere in there. Because ZS is pretty high on Scun tank as a Pokemon earlier. He was mentioning it in the VR chat earlier that day. He was like, hey, I think Skunk's pretty decent. And I told him, I don't think it is, but you know what? I respect it. Skunk's pretty cool. And so seeing a Scun tank here just reminded me of ZS. I don't even think it switches out into the battle this game, so typical Robbie alive, the featured mon doing nothing. Yeah, I really did not like Calos' matchup here. And it's not even for any particular reason beyond the fact that there is a Ditto, and this Ditto does not have a goal. There's no role for this Ditto this battle. And now some of that ends up being because of sets revealed in the battle. Because if you're looking at this kind of matchup, the Ditto's most likely job would be to copy the Paldean Tauros if it was a bulk of Trailblaze set, and stop a counter sweep. Maybe you can even say copy the Tatsugiri, but again, that mon requires like 50 turns to set up. It doesn't seem overly likely you'd get in a situation where you could copy that, so Poros is what your target is. Problem is it ends up being Scarfed Poros, so it's not a very useful Ditto this game. Just not really got a target that you're looking to copy. And the Articuno as well ends up being kind of a lackluster set for this particular matchup, because it is the U-turn pivot set that we saw in SS. At least, that's what I think it was. It didn't really reveal a lot this game. We see it use U-turn pretty early on, that's about it. So just in general, the sets from Kush, not the greatest here, but let's see. He is Calos after all. Can he pull it out? Also, why are you like this, bro? Chill. Anyhow, Poros lead versus the Swine is always a free CC. He doesn't have to think twice about it. You may as well. As the Gardecuno comes out, eats that up like a boss, U-turning immediately on this Rotom to reposition with the Heracross. And this Heracross reveals itself to be the utility set with boots and spikes. So not a very intimidating set by any means, but he does get a knockoff on this Gligar, knowing that Watashi would probably just take this as a chance to throw up a spike layer of his own and then reveal Acro the next turn. So pretty nice. Now, unfortunately, Calos makes that really good play. And then he gets some pretty bad mispredicts versus the Gligar, I would say. As he gets up Rocks versus it here, which is fine. He just then expects the Preserve of the Gligar here, EQing to not let Poros come out. And yeah, I mean, now he just loses Pilot Swing for basically nothing. He gets some chip on the Rotom. But, you know, it would have been nice to get rid of the Gligar, maybe. Anyhow, you know, Rotom comes out, Volt Switching again. By this point, you might think it's Scarf Rotom. I'm going to tell you my guess, based on that this reveals itself to be Scarf, which you kind of have the reveal anyway through it being Intimidate as the ability. You could still be Intimidate with Bulk Up, however, a lot of time you see Cudchew because the sets like to run the Lumberry just for status immunities. The Rotom probably Colbur is what I would guess by this point. And we see Rotom once again come out versus Heracross, because why would it not? Especially with Pilot Swine down, this one can Volt Switch as much as it wants. And this is where you get like the ultimate reveal too, that it's Scarf, because it takes Hazards. Hazards plus Intimidate equals choice item. Now, Kush goes for Terra Dragon, thinking a Flare Blitz might come out just to catch the Gardecuno. The problem is CC is always your play there anyway, because this Articuno set is so unintimidating that Fooly doesn't really need to care if it comes out. Like, he can just always go for CC and then double into Raja. And here we see the Raja literally switch in, predicting Gardecuno now to be forced out since the Poros CC locked, and he's able to get Copper Raja KO'd with a heavy slam. Heracross comes out now, so here you just have free sack. This lets you get your Rotom back in very, very safely. Kush knows that sack's coming, so he takes it as a turn. You know, try and get a little bit of progress. As Gardecuno comes in, tanks a Shadow Ball, gets KO'd by the next. I don't actually think that means this is double Scarf, by the way. I think the Gardecuno just, you know, did not have max speed. So now Tatsu comes out, Goes for the plot. Unfortunately, Watashi wins the speed tie. Also, potentially could have been Terra Fairy still in the back, because nothing used terastallizing, so... I don't think he had Terra Fairy, because I think he would always go for it there, just in case. But now the Rotom will be able to clean up this game. Shadow Ball always comes out. And even if Ditto hadn't been what came out here, there is no shot of a reverse sweep anyway by copying Rotom, because there's both Raja and Skunk, neither of which will die to a hit. So, last game. You ready for a masterclass performance? Now you look at this matchup, you say, why is it bad? Well, I point out this large table here. I don't think the Avalugg is particularly easy to break. Naturally, you have Salazzle and Jolteon. It's not like these mods can't break it for GXE. Problem is, obviously Avalugg's not being used to check them. I mean, come on, I'm not going to switch my Avalugg into a Jolteon to check it. So it's just, it's one of those games where I feel like from preview, Axtrax has the luxury of playing it very, very safely. Where Decidueye, you know, that's probably like the single biggest threat from just a preview standpoint to Axtrax's team. Because it could run two very differing sets. You know, you either got Sword Stance or Nasty Plot. Those bonds, you know, or those sets, I should say, do not share the same checks. Whereas you'd probably use, like, I guess Raja as a check to plot Decid. I guess? You would not be using it to check Sword Stance. And then vice versa applies to Avalugg, where plot you don't check with it, but Sword Stance you sit in front of and pretty comfortably wall even at +2. So, that mod's going to cause a bit of a conundrum, at least from a preview standpoint, but otherwise I don't think any one mod's too problematic. It's the kind of build where it'd be pretty easy to just throw a Scarf Paldean Tauros on it, so you have a nice offensive insurance for, I mean, even Decidueye still, but also all of Salazzle, Jolteon, and Scyther. And the Grimmsnarl, I mean, kind of the same issue that the other physical attackers are going to have versus Mr. Table. Yes, you can bulk up, but Table is so obese that it's going to be very, very hard to actually get by it. So let's see. How does GXC overcome the odds? Yes, I know I spoiled the result, but deal with it. He leads off with Last because of how you play HO. You just get your Spike up. He doesn't really care about preserving a Frostlass because why would you? And then even disables that. Bring out his own Jolteon here. Kind of just calm mind and scout out a little bit what the response is here. Decidueye is what comes out. And Grimm's always a pretty fair response, as it does pretty decent chunk with the Bolter there. We also see that this is Boots Decidueye, so not really much revealed about the overall set beyond that we see a physical set. Could be Sword Stance, could be just a pivot, as we see the Grimm bulk up twice. Now we see one of the first, a little bit of a misplay here by Axtrax. I think he was scouting out for a potential Drain Punch here, and unfortunately, GXC probably just doesn't have it. So he hits a huge player off. Then is also able to immediately force a Terra out of Axtrax's Jolteon just to revenge kill. So he's already made a lot of headway. Now here's where I get really confused. Because we see Poltergeist revealed, right? So you know this is physical Decidueye. Axtrax then switches into his own Decidueye to get Sword Stance on. Now, again, I'm wanting to try and give y'all a bit better of a perspective of what I think the logic is. Because I like to, you know, I never want to just say someone made a dumb play. Is this video? No, it didn't pause. Nice. I never want to just say someone made a bad play or a dumb play, because I don't think that's always the most helpful, unless it's just a play that made no sense at all. Then, well, you know, it happens. What I think happened here is Axtrax believed, okay, I could go Avalugg here. They'll probably bring in Salazzle, so I'm going to double to my Decidueye, which from full HP tanks one hit. Now, I still would have probably got Paldean Tauros, but maybe just don't have a move that revenge kills that you like locking into. Like, maybe you don't like Stone Edge lock because you're worried about a miss. Maybe you don't like EQ lock because it lets Scyther set up versus you. This play definitely did confuse me, because even as I try to rationalize it now, I'm like, I don't know why Avalugg switched. Because even if Lazzle comes in, I mean, I feel like you just sack and then switch into something else. But that's really the only thought process I could have, that this Decidueye would tank one hit from full. Maybe it's got some bulk investment, enough to live like a flamethrower, maybe even a fire blast. And it would just Poltergeist revenge kill, and then you've got a 3-on-5, and it's a pretty decent match from there. But obviously Decidueye stayed in the sword stance, and now gets to revenge kill the Decid and chunk Tauros. And this Tauros chunk is particularly important, as you see, because now it's in range of the spike. So this mode can't even come back out. Lazzle now gets to come out for free, force the self-KO, because, I mean, how are you preserving this Tauros? I'd love to hear it. And Jolteon comes out now. And here's where you see the real I'm him play, I would say. I think this play right here, it seems kind of small, because all he does is predict a switch. This Volt, though, does a lot for GXC. This, I would say, is the real play that swung the game entirely in his favor, because I don't think before that happens, it was necessarily all too straightforward for him. Winning that 50-50, though, to reposition now your Salazzle in, where it's obviously able to KO whatever it needs to with Fire Blast here, it gives him such a big momentum shift. Like, Avalug's gone now, so Scyther could win. And the Scyther reveals CC later, so it's not like it had no way of hitting Lug, but, you know. And then he also blocks this, and now he can safely Terra Blast, because who cares? You know, you don't need to. I think Axtrax maybe needed to pivot his Jolt in here, but I'm also not too sure that it mattered. Even if you get the Volt Absorb, I'm not too sure there was much of a route at this point. And he will go for the Protect here, and he will then try and get a miss, because, I mean, hey, maybe you dodge the Fire Blast from Salazzle and there's an out. Unfortunately, Axtrax seemed to have read this script incorrectly. The miss doesn't happen until turn 33, as you see. He misread 23 as 22, I guess. You know, it happens, it happens. He's going to be able to knock the Lazzle at this point. Scyther comes out, and it does reveal to be CC. GXC, like I said, I would call this a bit of a masterclass. At the very least, playing this endgame the way you needed to. He got the turn right that he really needed to. Also making... I mean, it's weird. I feel like that's the one turn where he, like, just truly made a really good play. Some of the other turns are just kind of like, You know, like, for example, player up from the Altaria. That's just, you know, that's actually mispredicting. It happens. He wanted to scout for Drain Punch. There was no Drain Punch to be had. This really is just the one play that I'm still kind of just confused on, where Avalug's switching out from Decid. The one theory I had, too, is, like, is he just no ice move? Is he body press EQ rapid spin? Which, obviously, that set you wouldn't run, because there's a lot of things that wall that. Yeah, I don't know, maybe he clarified, but I kind of want to ask him anyway, if he hadn't, because that turn feels, like, weird to me. Anyhow, I hope y'all enjoyed this. Week 3 is over. I don't even think Week 4 is posted yet, but you already know in a week from now, we will have that coverage. I will be here. Will you? Hopefully. Hope y'all enjoyed this. Shoutouts for Freezai for giving me more content. Beautiful man, beautiful man. I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Peace.